Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Enabling Smart Capture in a Microsoft World. My name is Brandon Campbell, and I'm a Director of Business Development at Ephesoft. Microsoft product offerings are so incredibly pervasive, it would be difficult to find an organization that's not using some component of their enterprise suite. Companies of all sizes and industries manage content, maintain documents, and work through business processes and Microsoft applications. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to review the benefits of using supervised machine learning capture technology with Microsoft products, Ephesoft's open API library for integration with the Microsoft Enterprise Suite, and third-party applications, as well as to demonstrate a content capture, processing, and routing workflow. Now, as I said, if you work in an office, odds are you're interacting with Microsoft at some point in your day. Think about some of the applications in their product suite. Dynamics as a customer relationship management or CRM tool, Azure for cloud storage and infrastructure, SharePoint for document and records management, Flow for business process management and basic workflow automation, Outlook for email communication, and something that all of these applications or these services have in common is their usage, their storage, their maintenance, and their process control of organizational content. Think Office documents and records, application forms, customer email correspondence, vendor orders, sales contracts, internal memos. Now, according to a recent study, 57% of Fortune 500 companies utilize Azure, and 80% of those same companies employ SharePoint for content management and storage. And nearly 50,000 organizations around the world use Outlook for email correspondence. So, how can an advanced capture tool touch all parts of this ubiquitous work platform while supporting the incredibly common organizational goal of automation and workplace digitization? If we can assume that the core of any business is its documents and the data that those documents represent, then the Ephesoft Smart Capture platform gives you access to the unstructured content that lies within them. Our supervised machine learning and analytics engine can help classify documents and extract data, which minimizes manual data entry, and it gives you structured data from unstructured content. Whether you're scanning sales contracts into your client repository in SharePoint or using classification web services in Flow, Ephesoft can address nearly any document automation need. So Ephesoft Smart Capture aims to reduce the processing time, increase efficiency, and eliminate errors in document-centric processes. Digging into the actual technology behind Ephesoft Transact, let's break down the method by which the application handles unstructured documents. Now, the first step in any capture workflow is actual ingestion of the content itself. In the case of Microsoft, we have out-of-the-box connectors for grabbing documents of all types from Outlook and SharePoint in batch. Document capture can be scheduled on a predetermined frequency, or it can be triggered in real time as new documents appear at a content source, such as from an end user scanning in a file or from an email appearing in an inbox. Next, we move on to image processing, where basic image enhancements are applied to document pages, and the document is rendered fully text searchable through an embedded OCR engine. Ephesoft supports a variety of text conversion tools, including engines like OmniPage, RicoStar, and Tesseract. Now, after the document has been broken down into individual pages and made fully text searchable, the Smart Capture platform assembles the pages into single documents and categorizes the document according to full content analysis. We use unique classification algorithms that do not require the creation of rigid document templates for highly accurate categorization. So, once the documents are sorted into their appropriate categories, Transact is going to utilize a combination of pre-configured rules-based logic along with machine learning to identify and extract key pieces of metadata. And these predefined extraction methods include capture mechanisms such as key value pair extraction, where the application searches for an anchor value near a desired field, or pattern matching, which utilizes regular expressions, or fuzzy database lookups, or even tabular extraction. Now, once the application has analyzed the content and completed the data extraction step, the documents may be routed to a validation queue for verification or remediation of the machine extracted index fields. Fields may be highlighted in a validation user interface based on the confidence value or the certainty of correct information, essentially, which is determined by Transact. For example, if after this full textual analysis, Transact's output for the field invoice total falls below a designated confidence score, Transact's built-in document processing workflow is going to trigger that document and that specific field to be flagged for review by an end user. Now, the final step in the content processing workflow is actually exporting the content, represented by sorted documents and their associated data files stored as an XML or CSV, into their final location. Again, in a Microsoft environment, this can mean routing a document into SharePoint Online, Microsoft Flow, Dynamics, or it can simply mean sending the document to a hot folder for a downstream system to pick up and to use. So there are essentially two distinct stages of a document-centric workflow where a component of the Microsoft Enterprise Suite would interact with Ephesoft. The first is content onboarding or upstream capture, and the second is mid-flow processing. So let's walk through an example workflow where Ephesoft acts as upstream capture in a common document-centric process. All right, so let's say that a vendor sends your company an invoice. Given the user count statistic I shared a few minutes ago, it's safe to assume that your organization uses Outlook, and that invoice is sent to an accounts payable inbox via an email attachment. Ephesoft Transact is going to monitor that inbox for new incoming messages and then automatically ingest the email in the attached document as a part of its initial capture workflow. Then, Transact identifies the email attachment as an invoice through full contents analysis of the document. Remember that rigid document templatization is not a factor with the Ephesoft Smart Capture product suite, so it doesn't matter if all your vendors format their invoices slightly differently. We'll be able to recognize that information regardless of the document layout. So based on the categorization of the invoice, there might be a few key data fields that need to be extracted to populate downstream systems and processes. So using a combination of rules-based capture definitions and machine learning, as I briefly covered on a previous slide, the application then identifies fields like invoice total, net payment terms, vendor name, and line item quantities. Next, we want to make sure that the address listed for our vendor on that document is the same as the address we have on file in maybe our CRM system. So we do a database lookup to Microsoft Dynamics. If the addresses do not match, the invoice can be flagged in a validation queue for end user review, or we can have Ephesoft push an update call to the CRM to update that database via a script. Lastly, the invoice and its associated metadata is routed to SharePoint via our out-of-the-box export plugin. And all of this could be accomplished completely transparently to the end user. Now think about how many different Microsoft applications we just touched without a document scanner, a clerk, or an employee having to key in a single field or manually relocate an electronic file. And if you're one of the many thousands of companies using Azure for cloud infrastructure, all of this can be installed on the Microsoft Cloud to mitigate the burden of server management for the IT department or your service provider. Now, what about using Ephesoft Smart Capture platform as a mid-flow process? Maybe you need to be able to classify or convert documents or extract metadata through code as a part of an existing workflow. Well, Ephesoft's Open API provides a powerful document capture automation tool and OCR platform within the world of Microsoft. So before we get into a real-world example and demonstration, let's take a moment to talk about the Ephesoft Swagger and to talk about why this is so impactful for customers who do use Microsoft products such as Flow, for example. Swagger, which is also referred to as Open API Specification or OAS, helps define a standard language-agnostic interface to RESTful APIs. And for the non-technical folks on this call or on this webinar, it is essentially the definition and description of an API. And this allows people, as well as robotic processes or computer automation, to discover and understand the capabilities of that web service without needing to access the source code or that product documentation. So when a web service call is properly defined within Swagger, a consumer can understand and interact with the remote service with an incredibly minimal amount of implementation logic. Now, why is this so incredibly cool? To start, this is huge for the IT and service teams working on implementing a project. It is going to greatly minimize the amount of custom coding or scripting any given multi-application solution requires. Moreover, the easy-to-use web service enables true plug-and-play functionality with Ephesoft as a capture mechanism within a document processing workflow. So in sum, it's expanding support for application interoperability. And with so many different systems and applications that are used in a Microsoft environment, the Ephesoft Swagger is highly valuable. All right, so let's move on to the mid-process capture workflow that I promised with Ephesoft. Now, in this use case, let's imagine that we're working with, let's say, an insurance company. Similar to the previous workflow I walked through with Ephesoft Transact as a front-end capture mechanism, we're going to start this process with an email received in Outlook and end the process with documents in SharePoint. So let's say a client emails an insurance form, a claim submission to their agent. The insurance company uses a robotics process automation or an RPA system to monitor incoming emails. The system's going to grab the email from the client along with the attached form and send it to Ephesoft Transact for processing. Now, Ephesoft is going to identify the form and the different document types from the email and their attachments. And then based on that identification, it's going to automatically extract key pieces of data like name, claim number, dates, and so on. And in this case, Ephesoft might even perform a signature check on the forms to make sure that the claimant has filled out all necessary signature fields. And once Transact completes its capture workflow, the documents, along with an XML file of the extracted data, are picked back up by the RPA system. So the RPA system is then going to review the data that the Ephesoft platform extracted and will make a determination as to whether or not this document can be sent to SharePoint to be added to the client's file, or if there's missing information like a signature field or key fields were left blank, the system can send an email back to the claimant to let them know that additional information is needed. So you can see that in this instance, Transact entered the document process progression midway through the workflow, but it still provided a crucial element of capture automation to enable this touchless insurance claim process. So without further ado, let's hop into and look at a live example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my browser here. And I'm going to open up the Nintex Workflow Cloud Dashboard. So let's take a look at the dashboard here. And in case you're unfamiliar with them, as a company, Nintex is a major Microsoft partner. I'm going to walk through a workflow in their process automation tool to showcase Ephesoft's interoperability with third-party applications along with the Microsoft suite. Now, Nintex is an easy point-and-click workflow automation software that tackles everything from basic business functions to company-wide processes without an end user or an admin having to write code. And that Ephesoft mid-flow process that I talked through earlier for an insurance claim can be mapped in a tool like Nintex that I'm displaying right now. So we start off in the designer where I've already created the basic flow for processing an insurance claim. And let me actually hop back here and open up the project that I've created within the designer. And if you've worked with Microsoft Flow as a BPM tool, this user interface shouldn't look too different to you. So like I said, I've created a basic process workflow here to mirror that insurance claim process we talked through earlier. Now the trigger for this workflow in this case is going to be the appearance of a new file in a box folder that we've specified as our watch folder. In this case, that box location is where incoming insurance claim forms are scanned. And then this branching mechanism here allows us to determine where incoming insurance claim forms are scanned, where they need to be routed, whether they need to be sent to SharePoint for final storage and to have an email notification sent to the appropriate manager for their approval, or whether an email needs to get sent back to the initial claim submission individual, letting them know that key pieces of information are missing from their submission. From there, the claimant's record in CRM is going to be updated with a history of their actions, and then this workflow would be complete. So it is a fairly straightforward process with manual document routing and information validation steps being automated by the workflow tool. However, we are missing the stage at which the actual details stored in the claim form and its associated documents are retrieved and made available for the workflow decision tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the available actions here on the left-hand side of the screen of the designer user interface. And I'm going to scroll down to the Ephesoft Web Service API. And what I'm going to do is we've defined this Swagger for easy consumption. I'm just going to drag and drop this action in the workflow right at the top of the workflow after the documents have been captured and place it right here. So the web service that we selected essentially calls the Ephesoft server, and it's going to perform image processing, in which case it converts the image files into text searchable documents and splits the files up into multiple documents as necessary, and then it categorizes the documents and extracts the data according to the batch class configuration. So if I click on this configure ellipses here on the right hand side of this widget, I'm going to open up a window where I can enter some basic details. For the purposes of this particular demo, I'm just going to connect to the testing Transact server on the Ephesoft cloud. And now I need to enter the batch class identifier so the Transact application knows which capture rules to apply to the documents it receives from this web service action. So what I'll do is I'm going to navigate over to the Ephesoft Transact application, where we can take a look at the project or batch class that we built specifically for insurance claim document classification and extraction. So I'm going to open up this administrator drop-down list here and click on batch class management. Now note here that I'm working with Ephesoft through a thin client or a browser-based user interface. And keeping in theme with minimal IT burden, no desktop applications are required for installation. So I'm here in the batch class management user interface, where I can see a list of all of the batch classes that are available to me as an administrator to this particular Transact server. Now the key batch class I want to identify here is this insurance claims form batch class that we created specifically for working with insurance claim forms. So I can see that the identifier is BC97C. So what I'm going to do is hop back into the Nintex workflow cloud user interface, and I'm going to enter that BC97C, if I can double check to make sure that was the right name for it. Yep. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, whenever we are processing documents as a part of this workflow, use this project. Now, why we're using this project in particular, I'm going to give you a quick look. So if I open up my project insurance claims forms batch class, what I'm going to see here is I'm going to see a list of document types that I've created or trained as a part of this project. So let's say I'm working with, if I can open up a claim form here, let's say I'm working with pet claims. It's a very common insurance to purchase if you have a pet. I have a dog myself, and I highly recommend having a pet insurance if you have adopted a dog that might have some health issues. So we have a pet claim form that asks for some basic information, and what I want to do is I want to use this as a sample to train the Transact application on how to recognize different claim forms. So what I can do is I can select my document type as a claim form, and then I'm going to drag and drop this sample document into my upload learning files. And what's going to happen is that Ephesoft is going to take that sample file and it's going to use it as a file upon which it can learn what type of information to look for when it's performing its full text, full content analysis of documents, looking to categorize them as claim forms. And if I had other document types here, maybe as supplemental documents. Now, if I open up this document type claim form, what I'm going to see is a list of fields. Let me open the screen all the way up again. I'm going to see a list of fields that we've trained as part of this particular project. So in this case, information that I'm looking for is the claimant name, the date of the claim, the policy number associated with the claim, and the claim total. Maybe I also need to add a signature field, for example, where I want to verify that the form and the submission had been actually filled out. So what I'll do is hop back into my index fields, select add, and I'm going to add a field called signature. If I can talk and type at the same time, it's going to be a signature field. And then I can define what type of data I'm going to be looking for from within here. So I can say if I'm looking for a string of text, if I'm looking for a floating block of text, if I'm looking for a certain integer, or just basic Boolean here. So I would define what I would want that to look like, and then working with my sample files, I would provide further information to say, okay, this is where we're performing a pixel check to identify whether or not a document has been signed. So from a project configuration perspective, we have a very easy to use interface that allows us to essentially point and click, drag and drop sample fields, sample files, so that we can help give the system a rounded background in terms of what it should be looking for when we're identifying information that's important to us for this insurance claim, or for the supplemental documentation, or other documents that might be associated with this particular project or batch class. So I'm going to hop back into this Nintex Workflow Cloud Designer really quickly and say that once what we have done essentially is, if I open up this web services widget again, is that we've identified the batch class that we want to call on the Transact test cloud server that I'm working on here in my batch class management, to say, okay, anytime we're going to be processing documents, we're going to send a call to that Transact server. We're going to have content processed using this particular project that we defined, and that output is then going to be available to the rest of this downstream workflow. So it's incredibly easy to interact with third-party applications as a part of a mid-flow process using Ephesoft Transact and the web services APIs that are available. So that concludes our demonstration. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or would like some more information, please do reach out to us via email, visit our website, fill out a contact form, or you're more than welcome to reach out to me via email as well. Have a great day, everybody.